Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Sjælland in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but I think it is most definitely fair to say that this brewery is best known for their different kinds of IPAs. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases at the time of filming this video. It is supposed to be very, very nice, and it came as a recommendation from Jessica and Nicolina at Beer Hive in Amar in Copenhagen, and they've always pointed me in the direction of some very nice beers. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. It feels like a little while since we've reviewed a beer from these guys, but hopefully it's another good one. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Gørløse, which is to the northwest of Copenhagen, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Oust. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a double dry hop double IPA. So yeah, this beer was released in December of 2022, and it was brewed in collaboration with a speed metal band called Oust, who of course I will need to go and listen to after we finish filming the video. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly if this one is going to be a New England IPA. It does have oats and wheat listed on the ingredients list, but I'm guessing it might be safe to say that this one will be a New England hazy of some description. But yeah, it seems to have got good reviews, and we've had some very, very good IPAs from Dry and Bitter in the past. Of course, this is where they have really made their name. So let's crack on and see what this beer is going to have in store for us then. And again, thank you to Jessica and Nicolina for the recommendation. Check out the link to their Facebook page in the video description below. Great selection of Danish stuff, and you'll always get some other random things in there as well. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dry and Bitter Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember that you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography-based tagging system. If you go to the search bar, type in your home county, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from your local area, they will pop up. Failing that, you can of course check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Danish playlist, along with many other things. I love reviewing Danish beer because we are so close to them and they've got some great stuff. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and chat a little bit about Dry and Bitter Brewery then. So, Dry and Bitter Brewing, as I've mentioned to you before, were founded back in 2015 by the owners of the Fermentoren beer bars. This is Soren Parker Wagner and Jay Pollard. So Soren originally studied history and English, but travelled the US extensively and visited many different breweries before he went on to study for his brewing diploma at the Scandinavian School of Brewing, which is of course attached to Copenhagen University. Jay, on the other hand, is originally from Australia, and he studied business but worked for a number of years as a bartender. But together, the two guys founded the Fermentoren beer bar back in 2011, and then they started brewing under the name Crooked Moon because they basically wanted to brew some of their own beers that they could sell in the bars. But they were also involved in the founding of Kollektivet, which is a collective brewing space in Gørløse. There was a few others involved in that as well that went on to found their own companies, but they still brew their beers there, and they've gradually expanded their capacity over the years. But from the beginning, there were a few breweries involved. Gamma and Osligan were involved. They were two of the main ones, actually, but they've since moved on to their own facilities. Bad Seed, Black Rooster, Ghost Brewing were also there as well, and there have been others at certain points in time. And yeah, they have just, I think they've basically taken over this facility for themselves now, so it's not really Øl Kollektivet anymore, or the beer collective, if that makes sense. But in addition to the Copenhagen Fermentoren, they also had a little bar in Aarhus, but I believe this was very short-lived. But the Fermentoren bars have beers that are brewed exclusively for them. Today they're brewing in excess of 200,000 litres of beer. I haven't been able to find a really up-to-date figure on how much they're brewing, but they've been gradually expanding the capacity of the brewery over the years, as I've mentioned before. But they also host their own beer festival, which is called Fermentoren's Flying Circus, and that is one that I will need to go and have a look at some point in the future. But in May of 2021, I believe, or was it August of 2021, Soren Parker-Wagner withdrew from the company following allegations of inappropriate actions towards women, and so the company is now exclusively managed by Jay Pollard, although he of course has a team underneath him. But it's Jay Pollard is now the main man behind Dry and Bitter Brewing. And as of December 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 265 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and they're starting to produce some sours and other different things as well. They've been producing some old school Belgian type sours from what I understand too, so we need to try and review some of those for you on the channel at some point soon. But like I said, this brewery is mainly known for their different kinds of New England hazy IPAs, although they have done some imperial stouts and things over the years as well. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Dry and Bitter Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a look at this beer itself. So as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty interesting. It actually reminds me of the name of the band has gone straight out of my head, but the Ralph Sheepers is the singer. It reminds me of one of their album covers actually. But yeah, there you can see Oust, which looks really nice. I think just the light of this one, the colour contrast isn't so great on the cover of the can there. It doesn't show up all that much, unfortunately, but you can see plain silver top on the can. This is a 440ml can, of course, and there you can see the Dry and Bitter Brewing Company symbol. But it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. It says, is Oust really the real deal or just that speed metal band? A double dry hop of Motueka, Eldorado and Citra give you notes of lemongrass, melon and papaya on the hazy body with a soft finish. So I'm guessing then it will be another New England hazy IPA. But this one, as we said, it's 7.5% ABV. They're describing it as a double dry hopped double IPA. I guess 7.5% is the limit where you could say it's a double IPA. For me, a double IPA is sort of 8 to 10% ABV, and then the triple would be 10 to 12, and I'd say anything above 12 is probably a quadruple. But yeah, that's just me. So this is quite a low ABV double IPA for me. But Motueka, Eldorado and Citra, we know all of these hops quite well. Motueka about 8% alpha acid if I remember correctly. New Zealand hop gives you a lovely big oily lime. Eldorado's about 12% alpha acid. American hop gives you a good little bit of pineapple and also some nice juicy mango notes. Citra, of course, one of the classics, 14% alpha acid. American again, big sort of mango notes, but also a good little bit of lemon limey character, and it can give you a wee bit of gooseberry and stuff like that as well. But yeah, let's get this guy out and have a taste of it, see what it's all about. The Oust IPA from Dry and Bitter in Gurløse on Sjælland in Denmark. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely a New England IPA. Definitely a New England hazy. You can see that as soon as you pour the thing. So, there we are. I think that'll do to have a wee look at it, and we'll put the rest in before we go on to actually taste the beer. But I tell you something, the aroma of this does smell very, very nice. So, as you can see, this beer is poured with a solid finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream coloured head. I wouldn't describe it as perfect white, but just look at the little bubbles in there. The head of this beer looks absolutely lovely. You can see lots of small bubbles in there, a few kind of medium to bigger ones up toward the top. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. In terms of the carbonation visible in this one, there's not too much there. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But it does look very, very nice actually. Yeah, so the colour of this one, I would describe this as being akin to like a nice rich mango juice. I always like comparing the appearance of these New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But yeah, kind of akin to a nice big sort of mango fruit juice for sure. But remember, the colour of the beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put into the beer will affect the colour of it as well. But like I say, yeah, you don't normally have to care about that when it comes to New England IPAs. It's mainly to do with the malts and the length of your wort boil. But yeah, the level of haze on this one for a 7.5% is fairly impressive. It's certainly got a good little bit of that soupy, gloopy character to it, actually. But yeah, remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, the wheat content, and to a degree, the yeast as well. So yeah, it looks really, really nice, this one, but pretty much as you would expect from any kind of modern New England hazy IPA. So let's have a wee look at the aroma then and see how things go. So yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, that does smell very, very nice. So first impression of this one is that it's quite sort of farmhousey and yeasty, but it's also got a good, it's quite farmhousey and kind of yeasty and crackery leaning New England IPA. The green component isn't too pungent in this one, but it's got a lot of juicy fruit, and it kind of leans toward that sort of citrusy, that sort of citricy end of the spectrum with the New England IPAs. But yeah, aroma wise, it is pretty interesting. As I've said to you before, for me there are 6 elements to think about when it comes to New England hazy IPAs. You've got that sort of you have that kind of farmhousey, yeasty type character. You've also got the rye leaning, grainy side of things. Those are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, in fairness. But then you've got the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creamy character, and also a little bit of the kind of malty sweetness in there too. So yeah, aroma wise, oh, just lost a little bit of it there. But aroma wise, this one is quite interesting. It leans a little bit toward that farmhousey, yeasty side of things. And as I say, good floral green component, but not too pungent, and then you've also got that nice kind of citrusy note to it. So let's break this down and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth, actually. But I've got a feeling this is going to be one of these IPAs that smells quite a bit different from how it actually tastes. It reminds me of some of the Stockholm brewing ones that I've come across before. They always had these really yeasty notes, but then they were quite different when you actually tasted them. So yeah, it must be something to do with Motueka's interactions with certain yeasts, actually. Because I've seen the Cashmere do the same, so it must be these more kind of citrusy leaning hops that do certain things. But yeah, anyway, the backbone of this beer, you can absolutely smell there's a bit of fresh white bready bread crust in there, absolutely fresh. Yeah, lovely fresh bit of white bready bread crust in there. It almost smells as if you've got a bit of the kind of flour still left on it. Above that, absolutely some Jacob's cream cracker. As I say, this beer is quite yeasty and crackery leaning in that sense. So yeah, good little bit of that going on. Fresh white bready bread crust, a little touch of woodiness in there as well, some Jacob's cream cracker, and then you start to get the kind of bready notes in this one. So you can smell that fluffy, fresh white bread in there, absolutely. And that's going to be a mix of the wheat and the barley malt in this one, so lovely fresh white bread in there. You also get a little touch of the wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose in this beer. So yeah, lovely little bit of yeah, for me, there's definitely a little touch of that wheaty bitiness in there, but it's not overly prominent. The wheat's actually acting to smooth out this beer for the most part, I think. So yeah, you've got that fluffy white bread, the wheat kind of on top. The oats are a little bit hard to... I'd say the oatiness in this beer is a little bit hard to detect, actually. You get a little touch of creaminess right in the middle of the nose, but you can also smell a little bit of dryness. And as I've said in many videos before, for me, the oatiness in a New England IPA is always an indicator of how fresh the beer is. The drier that these beers smell, and on the oaty side of things, it's usually the older they are, the creamier they are, the fresher they are. This one's kind of, I think because of the sort of yeasty and crackery character this one has. I know this beer is very fresh because Jessica and Nicolina told me that. But yeah, this one is actually very, this one really is just, it really because of the yeasty character and the woodiness and things like that, it has that little bit more dryness to it in the malt base, which is quite interesting. So the oats actually smell quite dry in this one. Above that, there's a little touch of like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. And you also have just a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuity character as well. So yeah, I like that. I do like how that goes together. So yeah, the malty and yeasty side of things in this is quite interesting. It really is, just aroma wise, this is a bit more of one of the kind of farmhousey leaning New England IPAs from my perspective. But let's go on to the hoppy side of things. So yeah, aroma wise, the hoppy side of this beer, the green component at least, there's a good little touch of earthiness to this one. Not madly much. I wonder how much of that's coming from the yeast, in fairness, because none of these hops are particularly earthy, but there could be something else in there in the whirlpool or whatever. But yeah, you've got a nice kind of bright floral aromaticity and also a good little bit of grassy zestiness as well. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is quite is really quite interesting. Yeah, so nice little bit of grassy zestiness in there. A wee touch of yeah, as I say, you've just got that bit of bright floral character in behind it, but there's quite a bit of earthy and herbal note out of this one. As I say, I think the way Motueka, I'd love to know what yeast they have in this one, because I've seen these kind of notes before when Motueka's involved and there's a certain yeast, so there must be something going on there with the chemistry. That's one of the things with beers. Different malts react to different hops and malts react together differently, and of course the yeast plays a big role as well. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. On the fruity side of things then, I think we've said everything we need to about the green component, but the fruity side of the beer, it's kind of interesting. So you absolutely get, I can see on the can why they say papaya. There are sort of aromas like that going on, but for me, lovely bit of juicy mango. Absolutely, you can get a little bit of that sort of dry apricot and papaya quality to it. But I'm actually getting quite a lot of pineapple out of this beer as well, and that's most likely to come from the El Dorado. The mango, I think, is most likely to come from the Citra, and the apricots and papayas will come from that as well, and also to an extent the El Dorado. I'm surprised I'm not getting a wee bit more sort of like passion fruit or something from this one. It's actually very, very soft on its it's very soft on its tropical fruit notes, but there's a big oily limey character to this one, and that is 100% Motueka. That is all the Motueka that is doing that in this one. But you know, in fairness, I say that's all Motueka. Citra can give you a little touch of that as well. But yeah, big sort of oily limey character to this beer, which is really interesting. So yeah, the way this beer goes together is quite interesting from the aroma. I think this is going to be a bit different though when we taste it, but as I always say, take a wee bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, pardon me, this one is the Oust double dry hopped double IPA, New England quite obviously, from Dry and Bitter Brewing in Gorlos, just to the north of Copenhagen on Sjælland in Denmark. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, there are some similarities with this beer, with how it goes, with how it smells, but there's also a few differences as well. It is quite limey leaning, and it is also quite farmhouse leaning, but there are a few different things going on with this for sure. Yeah, and I would absolutely say what I said before about this beer being a little bit of one of these more kind of farmhousey, yeasty leaning IPAs. I think that is absolutely fair in this one. You are absolutely getting some of that for sure. So yeah, definitely a sort of farmy housey. If you like the pardon me, the kind of beers that you get from the likes of Alchemist and things in the US, then this is one that will kind of suit your taste palette. But yeah, quite citrusy and quite a farmhousey New England IPA, this one. So yeah. Yeah, so where do we start with this one? I will say straight away, it is a nice beer. Isn't my favourite one I've had from Dry and Bitter. Not, I think probably not. Hey Fem is a very difficult one to beat. Double Dippy Doo and Triple Dippy 2, those are awesome. What was it? Hobo Chick back in the day was a really nice one. I hope I'm, yeah. Or was it Hop Sweat? Yeah, Hobo Chick and Hop Sweat were also very good West Coast IPAs as well. I really, really enjoyed those. And the one that we had from them recently too was it was Romanian or something. That was awesome. That was a really, really good beer. But yeah, this one, it's nice, but as I say, I don't think it's quite up there with my favourite ones. But absolutely more of a kind of farmhousey kind of yeasty leaning New England IPA. So let's break this down and describe it a wee bit more in depth for you. So middle middle third of your palate. You can feel the backbone of this beer. You've absolutely got a little bit of that kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there, although I'd say it's maybe more of a wholemeal brown bread crust. It actually has a little bit more graininess to it. So on top of the bread crust, you've got a good little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker. And toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness and stuff underneath the cracker as well. So that's kind of quite interesting. Above the cracker though, you start to get there's a little touch of a wholemeal brown bread in there. Then you get the white bread for sure. Absolutely, a little bit of that in there. The white bread's quite interesting because it's actually quite light and quite airy. But then you can feel the more dense wheat layer on top of that. And that's one of the things about this beer. You will notice that it's actually quite thin and quite crisp layers, but there are quite a few of them. The exception to that would be the kind of barley malt bread layer right in the middle of things. But then, yeah, pardon me, you have that sort of more dense wheaty layer on top. And the wheat in this beer is actually acting as more of a kind of smoothing agent. So yeah, the wheat in this beer is a little bit more dense, and it's also acting as a kind of, yeah, smoothing agent to the beer as well. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting, this one. On top of that, the oaty character in this beer, as I say, isn't too prominent. Down the middle line of your tongue, you do get a little bit of a kind of oaty dryness to the beer. It's got a little touch of creaminess in the middle of the palate, but then as you move further out toward the edges of your palate, it is more of a kind of, you do get a little bit of that more oaty dryness out of it, which I think is quite interesting. So yeah, a little bit of that going on. In the dead centre of your palate, there's maybe like in the very dead centre of your palate, you've maybe got a tiny little circle of a bit of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of vibe to the beer, but that's really quite minimal, to be honest with you. But as I say, I do quite like, I do really quite like how it goes together. Yeah, the malty side of this beer is quite interesting, I have to say. So yeah, that's the middle third of your tongue with this one. Back third of your palate, then there are a few things going on. In terms of the kind of bread crusty base of the beer, you can feel that's a little bit drier. Pardon me again, still recovering from this. You've got a little bit of that kind of bread crusty character there, and it feels a little bit more grainy. Above that, you get the Jacob's cream cracker, absolutely. So yeah, a little bit of bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker. Then you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of wholemeal brown bready layer, and that feels quite light and airy. Then you've got the fluffy white bread above that, and then you've got a layer of a sort of slightly spicy, yeah, you do have a little bit of that kind of spicy, wheaty character on top of that, and then above all of that, you've got this more airy, farmhousey type bready character, a little touch of honeycomb, a little bit of a more woody note to it, but definitely that back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is absolutely a lot, it is really tall. Then as you come further forward, it just kind of squashes together and condenses that wee bit more. So yeah, the way the beer goes together in that regard is very, very nice actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. The malty and yeasty side of this beer is quite interesting, but this is absolutely more of a kind of farmhousey type, but farmhousey and yeasty leaning New England IPA for me. So yeah, and it's I have to admit, I think with dry and bitter, the more oaty and kind of sweet leaning ones that I've had have been the best ones. I think that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it gives you a little touch of herbal quality, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a lot more kind of floral and aromatic. And I would say the more that I drink of this beer, the more kind of floral aromaticity I get out of it, actually. And so you have to remember, with IPAs, there are 3 different kinds of hoppings. Early addition hopping within the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you mainly bitterness. Late addition hopping, last half hour of the wort boil, a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Dry hopping after the wort boil is complete, and that is all flavour and aroma. New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter 2. West Coast IPAs use all 3, hence why they're more bitter. This beer, for me, I think this has got a little bit of early addition hop in it, because you can feel the depth of the green component in this one. You do have a little touch of pine and a little bit of kind of really deep floral character to it, but yeah, I think there is a little touch of whirlpool hop in this one for sure. But yeah, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness, as I say. As you come further forward, there's a touch herbal quality, but then you get that deep floral aromaticity and a little bit of spiciness there on the front corners of the tongue. Round the front curve of the palate, though, it's a little bit lighter and more, yeah, it's a little bit lighter and a wee bit more grassy, I would say. And yeah, I think that is quite nice. The green component in this one is pretty nice. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, so the border region there, it is kind of white bready, but there's a little bit of bread crust to it, and the base of that front third of your palate is a wee bit more the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more how would you say, it's got a little touch more kind of bread crust, like brown bread crust, and a bit of a smooth white bread above it, but it almost has a wee bit of a woody character too. But then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that just now. So, fruity side of this beer is actually really quite nice and quite oily, I have to say. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit of that stronger passion fruit, which is going to come from both the Citra and the El Dorado in this one. But as you move further forward, it's a bit more, you do get a little bit more mango and a bit more oily character to it. And then there's also a wee touch of kind of apricot and papaya and things underneath that, which, pardon me, I have to say I do quite like. So there's a little bit of that papaya and apricot in there, bit of a more oily mango on top, and then there is a wee bit of pineapple. But then as you move toward the front of that, as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, it's all about it is all about that big oily limey character that the beer has, which I really, really do enjoy. Yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really quite interesting. It's certainly a more kind of citrusy leaning, farmhousey type New England IPA, which, you know, I do enjoy these every so often, but I have to admit I probably am more inclined to enjoy the kind of oaty, creamy and slightly sweet New England IPAs, although a wheaty bitey one can be quite interesting as well, I would say. So yeah, this kind of farmhousey yeasty one is quite an interesting take on the style, I would say. But I think that's everything we need to say about the fruity side of the beer, to be honest with you. My notes on the fruits are that I think the fruits in this one, they vary a bit between aroma and flavour. I think that's absolutely fair to say. But yeah, I think we can go on to the mouthfeel then. Jeez, really weird how this kind of comes in and out, this dryness in my throat. So yeah, the mouthfeel of this beer, for me, this is pretty much right in the middle of the spectrum It's mid-bodied. The carbonation is smooth. The beer, to an extent, does have a slightly creamy mouthfeel to it, but at the same time, there's a little bit of wetness. In terms of IBUs, this is a standard 30. Yeah, standard 30 IBUs. I'd be very surprised if it's more than that. Could be a little bit less, in fairness. But yeah, you've got a nice malty base to it. A little bit grainy, a little bit kind of smooth, little touch of sweetness to it. But yeah, mainly a kind of grainy, farmhousey, yeasty leading beer, this one, as we said. Nice kind of big floral green component, and then some juicy fruity notes. And the fruits lean a bit more toward the oily side of things as well. So yeah, interesting beer, this one. I've enjoyed this, but I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite New Englands that I've had from Dry and Bitter Brewing, but it's certainly kind of cool for them to try something that's a wee bit different. This reminds me actually of a number of the Stockholm Brewing New England IPAs that I've had over the years. But yeah, the Motueka and I think the reason behind these flavours is to do with the Motueka and the interaction of the yeast, because I've seen this before, and that would be the common denominator, I would think. But yeah, really interesting beer, this one. This was the Oust double dry hop, double IB, 7.5% ABV from Dry and Bitter Brewing in Gurlos, to the northwest of Copenhagen in Denmark. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dry and Bitter Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point very, very soon. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and there will be more reviews very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kampai.